Hi, welcome to the Foundation Live Better series. I'm Julie Levinsky, Web Manager for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. Today's webinar is Adapting Life with Candace Cable. She is a pioneer in the sport of wheelchair racing and a 12-time Paralympic medalist who now attends the Olympic Games as a journalist. She also is a contributing member to the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation online community, writing blogs within the Life After Paralysis section for over 4 years now. She also represented the Reeve Foundation during the CRPD event at the United Nations. So I'd like to turn it over to Candace. Hello, Candace.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today and putting up with the wait that we had. The speaker with the technical difficulty was me. And I apologize. Excuse me, I apologize for that. But I'm here now, and I've been validated, and we're ready to rock this thing with our guest, Kate Willette. Kate is an author and an activist from Seattle, Washington. And after her husband broke his neck skiing in the spring of 2001, she did what most writers do. She tells a story. And she's told multiple stories. And we're going to get to go through one today that I think you're going to find is going to be a great resource, but also a great motivator to be able to do something about moving towards finding the opportunity to be able to recover from a spinal cord injury and not have to live with it the way it is. And so over time, Kate got more and more deeply into the science and advocacy end of the spinal cord injury world, and she published a memoir called Some Things Are Unbreakable in 2003. And as she got more involved with spinal cord injury world, she started to attend the annual Working to Walk conferences and began writing the blog, a very colorful blog for Working to Walk. And in 2012, she published Working to Walk 2012, a great story about some ordinary people who believed they could make something good happen, and then they did. And that really, I think, is a catalyst to the book that we're going to talk about today, her latest project, which is Don't Call It a Miracle, the movement to cure spinal cord injury. Whenever I see the word cure, I kind of think of pickles and things. So I like to talk about recovery and, restore health and wellness and that kind of thing. But I know everyone uses cure, and that's the tag word, and that's probably one we're going to talk about today. And so I really would love to welcome our guest today. Kate, please join us.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for that introduction so much, Candace.
Oh,
I think because the title of the book is up there, and the word cure is in there, now would be a good time to just maybe talk about that just a little bit, okay? For one thing, it's a real issue how to talk about how to get better, Yeah. I mean, the word cure does mean something very specific to people outside this world, and I think inside this world it means just about any recovery of function. So that's the sense I mean when I use the word.
Yeah, so
the title gets uncomfortably long if you try to, talk about restoration of function. The whole book is going to be, talking about what the cure is. So,
absolutely, and really, so let's go a little bit deeper on how you define what a cure is. I mean, so there's so many variations, right? There's for someone who's a paraplegic like myself, maybe just bowel and bladder are the first things that I want to work with, and then maybe my dancing shoes later. People who are quadriplegic are thinking about their hands. Someone on the ventilator is thinking about breathing. I mean,
yeah.
What's a deeper definition that came for you out of this book?
I think restoration of function in any form and from any place. Any time you get something back that you lost. I mean, my husband got a lot of function back after he has a C6 injury, but he can't use his right hand at all, So for him, when we talk about, if you could list all the things that you wish you had, that's high on the list, right?
Right.
He doesn't necessarily want to, ski the way he used to as much as he wishes he could use the fingers of his right hand. So for me, the word cure means, I'll say it again, any meaningful restoration of any function at all that was lost because of the injury.
I like that. I like it. It feels really inclusive and encompassing of all things that make us human beings, active human beings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned your husband, so we're going to go back in time, which is something we do on Adapting Life. It's a place where we get to explore, what maybe has happened in somebody else's life and how they dealt with it, moved through it, and then what they're doing now. So your catalyst to getting us to this moment of you writing this book is really your husband. And so if you would be willing to share the story with us of how he was injured, that I'm sure that our listeners would be really appreciative, and how he began to move forward. The two of you moved forward. Absolutely.
So the image that's on the screen now, Snowbird, is him before and him after. In the before picture, he's obviously enjoying himself. He was, worked at Snowbird for many years, first as a ski patroller and later as the guy who was in charge of maintaining the communication system that they had around the overhead tram at Snowbird outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. Best skiing in the world, as many people would say. And the picture on the right is him a few years post-injury, and he got hurt in 2001, in March of 2001. So the woman to his, in the right of the picture is our daughter Heather, who was 10 years old when he got hurt, and she was with him at the time. They were taking an afternoon, no big deal ski run in the mountains outside where we live in Seattle. And then he got airlifted to the local trauma center and spent 2.5 months there and came home unable to so much as sit up. I mean, he could barely roll over by himself unassisted at that time. He was very, very depleted by the injury. So
right, it's mind-blowing to me how quickly atrophy sets in on throughout the whole body. Even as a paraplegic, I'm a T10 paraplegic. Within days, there was a seeable difference in what my legs looked like, but even my upper body too, from laying in bed. Yeah, so I think that is one of the biggest things that's shocking visibly is how quickly the body atrophies to kind of use it or lose it is really so piece of it. And and with your book, just jumping ahead a little bit here, with the research that you did and all of it that you put into the book, and honestly, for everyone listening, you're going to order this book, you're going to get this book, you're going to download it, you're going to check it out, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's so big. How am I ever going to? And actually, don't be daunted by that, because this book, it's deceiving by its looks. Once you open it and start moving through it, it really makes sense, and it's very simple to understand and gives us real action steps. So, back to my question on atrophy, the spinal cord. Is it atrophy?
Is it atrophy? I don't think I would use that word in the same way that, we talk about muscles getting atrophied, right? Meaning that you can build them back up if that happens. The muscle tissue is still intact. It just hasn't been used, and so it loses some of its power, but that's not really the situation with what's going on inside of damaged cord.
Okay.
It's not atrophied in that sense. It's broken. And broken. There's other chemical stuff going on that we can sort of get to, and which is covered in detail in the book. I wanted to say thanks for saying that. One of the big goals I had in writing this particular one was to really get only the stuff that I think advocates and people who are interested in recovering at all need to know, and do it in such a way that it's not overwhelming amounts of information couched in language that is impossible. This is meant for people who haven't taken a biology class since 1980 or whatever. It is really not scary. And the thing I didn't tell you about my background is that I used to teach high school math. That was my job for a long time. So
and
I'm used to explaining complicated stuff. That's what I was trained to do.
I was going to ask about that. So that even brought it more to the forefront, that you realized that you really had to simplify it in a way that people would want to embrace the information and use the information and then do something with the information and do something about that end result of full recovery, or at least some type of recovery that is going to improve the quality of their life. And any kind of recovery will bring quality of life forward, definitely. And so as you and your husband recover from this injury, the family, the kids, everybody starts to make different accommodations. How did you get involved with the Unite to Fight Paralysis, the Working to Walk, and all of those efforts?
So what happened is this was 2001, right? So there wasn't a whole lot of stuff online available to people like me who wanted to understand better or even just talk to other people who were in my situation. So I ended up, like a lot of people did back then, and I think still today, at the CareCure website that's run out of Rutgers University. It's Dr. Wise Young's work. Okay, so on there was where I got the news that Christopher Reeve had passed. And I remember vividly where I was sitting and what I was doing when I understood that he was gone, and there was this community response on CareCure about what was going to happen now. He was the person, he was sort of the voice and face of fighting for recovery, right? He was the person that everyone associated at the time with how are we going to get better? Well, Christopher Reeve was always out there pushing for that. And so there was this kind of crisis, and a few people who were friends of mine said, let's go to Washington, D.C. and have a rally, in his honor. And that was the very beginning of it. They did that in the spring of 2004. And because neither Bruce nor I were really working for 4 years after his injury, we were too broke to go. And I remember sitting at my computer and waiting for somebody to tell me what's going on, who's there, what's happening. And and nobody was doing that. I had to wait days. I remember this. I still tease him about that. God, it took you forever to put those pictures up. So anyway, so the people who started that rally decided at the end of it they were going to make an annual thing, and they were going to invite scientists and try to pressure them to work faster, work harder, sort of be a little bit of what Christopher Reeve had done. Okay, that's how Unite to Fight Paralysis got started. And this image that you have on the screen is I'm there with my red hat on, and Marilyn Smith, who is the executive director of Unite to Fight Paralysis and one of the people who organized that first rally. We're doing a half marathon. We're trying to, this was a fundraiser, right? And the image on the right of the screen is her son Noah, who's given a speech at one of the Working to Walk conferences, and he's sitting in front of the Capitol building there. So, I put this picture together because it's this is what we think of. You raise money and you go to Washington or your local state capitol. And, those are the things I started out doing. So you can put the next picture up. Working to Walk is still going, right? It's on its 11th straight year of having scientists come and talk to people in chairs, and chairs, listen to scientists talk about what they're doing. And I super strongly encourage everybody to think about going, or at least reading the blog that I write from there, because it gives you a sense of what in the last year has been happening. in this world, and it's in Minneapolis next fall. You can see that.
And you write this blog only during the conference, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I set up usually like a WordPress site and just type as fast as I can everything that is being said and what I see around me and who's there. I do put links in it if people want more information. But it's like drinking from a fire hose at that place. It's just like so much information coming at you so fast. So.
Right, so much going on, and really trying to just get snippets of it so that people can then do their own due diligence and move through and investigate and explore the different pieces that maybe they're passionate about.
So that's what led to the next picture, which is the cover of a book that I decided to put together after the 2012 conference. We were down in Irvine, California, and it was pretty fantastic. There was a lot of really interesting stuff, and I was feeling frustrated because I knew that I couldn't possibly get it all, I type fast, but I couldn't do it. And there's a lot of context around what is being presented too that I knew the people around me were just they didn't have it. They weren't able to understand what was being said because they didn't have enough background. So I did this little Kickstarter thing and produced this book, which is basically a really careful explanation of everything that happened at that particular conference. So.
Right, and that is, for everybody who's listening, that's non-scientist guide, basically.
Yeah.
Of everything.
Of that one conference.
Of that one conference, yeah. And what was the response to this book that you put together from that one conference? People who read it, I think, were really grateful for it. But again, it's just this one little piece. It's only, 8 scientists, maybe 6 or 8 scientists who are talking about one little piece of their work. So it felt to me like it wasn't broad enough. The book itself needed some background, which is how I sort of started thinking about the one that I just recently finished. So. Right, the one we're going to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it just needed to be more comprehensive. That it was kind of snippets of it was like maybe the ticker tape on the bottom of the internet that goes by with little snippets of the news.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the book really brought forth it, maybe to pique people's interest and imagination, possibly. But
I think that's true. I think that is fair to say. And also, I think it made especially me aware of what was still missing from this entire effort to have an advocacy movement. Right? I don't think that people have enough entry information going in. It's like there's a bar to even talking about this with scientists or with legislators or people with money. You have to know a little bit more than I felt like most of us knew, even me after all those years of going to that conference. So.
Well, and not only know more, but be able to articulate it in a way that is going to be really concise and have emotional impact because it's an issue that when we think about some advocacies like the AIDS research, which is one of the points that you bring up in the book about how the book works and why it's really that was about life and death, right? And so there's this urgency to it, and and so with spinal cord injury, how do you create that urgency with that in that people are surviving it? Yeah,
that is a big question.
Yeah, and I feel like your book has a lot of that information, but as we go through today, maybe there's even more to that answer that we can offer our listeners. It's like, how do we create that urgency? Well, one, we get really educated about the subject, but the other is we got to make it interesting and maybe a little bit, dare I say,
I've always thought, too, Candace, people, my husband's injury is 15 years old, and yours is much older
41,
than that, right?
41.
Yeah. So there's this there's a thing that happens. Like we all have to make our adjustment to what's happened, right? I mean, we have to figure out how to get on with our lives and support ourselves and, do the things that you do, like just to be a human being in the world. But in the process of doing that, you sort of lose the sense that there's a whole possibility that it doesn't have to be exactly like this. Like there could be changes made. And what I was trying to do is figure out how to help people see that it only takes a little bit of effort from all of us, like,
right,
to push for that. Like I think, anybody who reads this book or who's, for that matter, been reading the news for the last few years knows that for the first time there are treatments in clinical trials in human beings with spinal cord injury. That wasn't true at all for like the first 10 years I was thinking about all this stuff. So, there's progress being made, and my whole agenda is to speed that up. Like do it faster, do more of it. Like let's get to the end quicker.
Right. So that's how I would take the urgency then, is that there's a lot of information out there. It is out there. We have to pay attention to the people and the organizations that are putting it out there. And we have some great resources toward the end here, because on the Reeve Foundation, we have Sam Maddox who's writing about it all the time. We have other pieces that are on the foundation also, and we have links that people can follow to get this kind of information and create that sense of urgency, like really getting people to embrace it. That it really is a life or death issue. I mean, with the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's this level of access that's happened that I think sometimes people are getting a little complacent with. But with the work that I'm doing with the Convention on Rights for Persons with Disabilities that Julie mentioned, the CRPD, what the global community is realizing is that there is a sense of urgency for creating access for people with all kinds of disabilities all over the world, that we have to do that. And I think that has to spill over into science and research to be able to affect the parts of disability that we can affect, and to eliminate those parts that we can eliminate. And we're never going to get rid of it all, but we have to really focus on getting that message forward. I think as far as people's lives do depend on it, and make it, I think, make that the emotional piece. At least that's what it feels like for me.
To me, it's just as simple as this is possible, and eventually it's going to happen, and I want eventually to be sooner.
Yes, of course.
I just have no doubt whatsoever that there will be treatments that restore function to people. I have seen it myself in a couple of cases already, and I want that to be available to lots more people, lots faster than the current trajectory has it being available. So the screen you have up now is just me asking myself, okay, what if I did win the lottery and I suddenly had like $100 million, would I know where to spend it? It shocked me after 6 or 7 years of going to Working to Walk and reading the science and, being connected inside this advocacy community. I wasn't really sure at that point what I would do. And the same question, if, I can lobby all I want, but what if, suddenly they were all willing to listen to me and desperate to hear what I had to say? Like, what would I say? What would I ask for with politicians? What would you ask for? The specific thing. Well, we'll get to that. Okay.
Okay.
At the end.
All right.
Okay.
Questions for us to
I'm just saying
right now. Right. Okay.
These were like the motivating questions for me.
Yeah.
Because
it's, if we think about it, it's what do we want and what are the obstacles? Because once we put it out there what we want, then we have to state what our obstacles are if we feel like what we want we can't have. And and it sounds like that's exactly what you're saying with these questions.
That's right. So if you look at the
steps we take, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to point to the very next, this learning from others slide. The AIDS ACT UP movement began in New York City because some people were going around asking this question: where can I go to sign up for clinical trials right now in New York? And what they found out was there was no answer to that question. There weren't any clinical trials going on in New York or anywhere else. And so that simple question was the sort of motivating, well, hell, then let's get some going. And they did a phenomenal job. And I think what people don't understand looking back on it is they also made a bunch of mistakes, which they will tell you. And I happen to have a good friend who was part of this effort. And she says, we were doing it without any, playbook. We didn't really know. We were just inventing whatever we thought would get people's attention. But what they did, they had a sort of two-pronged thing. One was, to make the public aware, and the other one was to get their hands on the decisions being made at the National Institutes of Health and at the FDA. And they actually guided the scope of science and the path of it themselves. Like they were finally invited to the meetings where people were deciding where to put the money. And sometimes they screwed up. They say that, this is a movie trailer thing, they say in the movie that they probably wasted a couple of years because they were pushing for these treatments that they thought were good, but that turned out to be useless. And a lot of people died while they were, misdirecting their energy in that way. But it was understanding the science that finally got them a seat at the table and got to what they have now, which is basically a cure.
Right. So I hear you saying that, this is a path that was followed to be able to get to a place that actually cured it, or has the ability to stop and slow down a disease. And the biggest part of this is that's a standout for you with the spinal cord injured community to take away from this is what?
Is that it didn't take, a million people. Like I think that the science committee that the AIDS, the ACT UP people only had like 18 people on it. Okay. I mean, they were super motivated and super well educated, but that's not a lot of bodies, to do such a tremendous, huge thing that they did. So to me, it's like, that's a model for our community. Like there are a lot of, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people with spinal cord injury. I'm quite sure that we could find, 100 of them who are interested in taking this on. And I just want to invite them to be part of what we could do. That's the message I take from it.
Okay. And I mean, it really does sound like, people with book clubs and things like that, getting together to just discuss the topic and how best to approach it and then move out there and really answering some of these $1 million questions that you say that are maybe the obstacles. What's real, what realistic hope exists in something like this.
Right. And what can I personally do to speed it up? This is an image of my friend Jennifer Longden, and I put it in this slideshow because she's the one who got this new book into the world, because she and I were at a Working to Walk conference in Boston, I think in 2013. And we're sitting in the bar at the end of the thing, and I was just feeling more frustrated than ever. Like, I know that, 80% of what was just presented went over the heads of most of the people here. A lot of it went over my head, and I'm just really tired of doing this every year, and it doesn't feel like it's going to move the dial. I mean, it's really important, and it's a great time. Working to Walk is really fun, but it wasn't accomplishing as much as I thought it could. And so Jen and I were sort of having wine and talking about this, and she said, well, what would you do? Like, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I, of course, being a writer, thought, well, obviously I would write a better book, write a new one. And we started talking about what it would be, and the first formulation was a sort of, science SCI Science for Dummies, like a kind of primer. And she has well, she blogs for the Christopher Reeve Foundation.
And she also has her own blog. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and she's a fantastic writer in her own right. But she said, well, I think you should write that, and I think we should get Peter Wilderauer to like buy into it, and then the Reeve Foundation can fund it and put it in the world. And that's exactly what happened. Like she had a conversation with Peter and talked him into having a conversation with me, and he saw the value of this project, and they went and found the money for it, and there it is.
Yeah, there it is, absolutely. And let's get into it. Let's go through this thing part by part, because we're not going to go into huge details here for anybody, because the details are in the book, but they're not details that are going to put you to sleep. They're actually going to help you ask a better question. And
that's that is perfectly said. Yes, we're going to help you to ask a better question.
Well, it's your book. It definitely spoke to me that way. It really allows us all to ask a better question, and also to articulate the need, and that there are things that are working. That's the really cool thing. And this book isn't in the beginning of the book. Peter, and with the introduction, it talks about how, this isn't just a one-time shot. This is something that's going to live and grow and breathe and evolve, and because the research is evolving and what's happening in the world is evolving, and the interest. And so this is your first primer here for everyone, and jumping into it is well worth the read if you have a spinal cord injury, just to even understand the life that you're leading already and what the possibilities are. So the very first, 1 through 7 here, it's really like how the cord works to give us real good insight. So you want to just share a little bit of it right here with us? That would be awesome. Guess
what I would say is that, there are 7 parts to it, 7 sections in the book, and the very first one is all about how a healthy cord works. Like, what are the pieces involved in that system, and how do they work together to, let us wiggle our toes and have sex and all the rest of it. Like, how was it designed to work? How does it work? So there's a bunch of pages about that, and nothing at all in the beginning about the injury. It's mostly just, here's what all of us who had or have temporarily functioning spinal cords, this is what it is, and this is how it works. And I have to say, I had the most brilliant illustrator in the world, and so
they really are fabulous illustrations. They're so.
Her name is Lisa May. She lives in Oregon. She's just wonderful, and she made this book work, I think, in a way that almost no one else could have. So, how the cord works, there's cells, okay? Cells are living things. There's a picture of the basic 3 kind of neurons that are in your brain and your spinal cord. And, the book is all about that. The first part is.
And one of the things that came to me when I was looking at the book and through the book and reading parts of it is that, this would just be a great FYI for the 7 billion people that live in the world. This is how your spinal cord works. You should know this. And
it's pretty amazing.
Everybody that I interact with and talk about spinal cord injury, there's a big blank stare looking back at me, kind of like, oh, spinal cord injury. It's this mystical thing that works our bodies or doesn't work our bodies. And so I think that, beyond someone who has a spinal cord injury and wanting to know about it, I think it really is a book that the whole family could read together to be able to understand, just how their bodies work. And I agree. And
obviously I find science really interesting, and I find especially the details of it just fascinating. Like, I love thinking about this and talking about it and seeing it illustrated well and all that stuff. But it's, for me, it's I'm sort of a geek on it. It's really fun. And that was a great joy of doing this. Was I still learned a whole bunch of stuff writing this and researching it. So
right.
So that's the whole first part. How does this work? And then once you get to the fact that the cord is made of cells, okay, then how about replacing cells? And everybody knows that there have been many attempts to use different kinds of cells to put them in the body. And so this whole part 2 of the book is what specifically those are. Like, various kinds of cells and why people think they might work and where they have been tried and what has been the result and so on. And, so I have this this pie chart deal here.
Right.
Which is on the left side of it, those are the cells that come from before birth situation.
Right, and we hear a lot about the stem cell piece, right?
Yeah.
About stem cells and,
right.
I mean,
there's a whole bunch of kinds.
Yeah, the Schwann cells.
Yeah. And then the right half of that little pie chart is the cells that are in your body after birth. And, there are reasons why people think they would be a better bet for us, and there are places in the world where they're being put into people's bodies right now. So all of that information.
The thing on the cells, what do you think about that? The things that are being put into people's bodies, like the stem cells, and
well, it depends on what you're talking about. And that's really what this part of the book is about. It's to give people a sense of mastery, okay, like complete understanding of what these things are and why. Like, is there any reason to believe that this would work? And is there, am I being sold a bill of goods when someone says to me, oh, I'll just put these OECs in you and you'll get better? I want people to come to that understanding themselves and not have it dictated to them by anybody. Because, there's a lot of misinformation about what has worked and what hasn't, okay? And I could spend 3 hours with you explaining all of that, but it feels more like I should tell people, read this section of the book if you don't read anything else. Like, understand what it is that people are trying to put into your body or other people's bodies.
Right.
I didn't understand this very well myself until I started researching it, and so mostly what I would say is only a really carefully controlled clinical trial makes sense. And that is being done with a few things on here: Schwann cells, neural stem cells, oligodendrocyte precursors. I don't know of anybody who's doing a clinical trial just with embryonic stem cells. And I give my reasons in the book why I don't think they should. But to me, this is one thing I will say. I think that cell replacements are a sort of 20-year horizon. Like, anybody who says this is going to be done in 5 years, I think is kidding themselves, because I don't think it is.
So it's a longer road to follow to be able to find out if there really is something that's viable. And then on to part 3, the use of the networks.
Candace.
Yep. Did I lose you? Kate?
Hang on, I'm not hearing you. Just a minute.
Oh, darn. Sorry, everybody. So it looks like we have a little bit of technical difficulty. So I think maybe Kate, are you back? Possibly. Oh, she said she lost her audio. Well, if you can hear me. Oh, but we're hearing little bits from you, Kate. And we'll keep moving forward here. I think, Kate, do you want to try to call back in and LaToya can help you? she possibly will be able to interact with me with the chat in a second. I apologize, everybody. Boy, this is a day of technical difficulties, definitely. First, my computer, and now when you look. Kate, are you there, Kate?
Boy, this is a day of technical difficulties, definitely.
Candace,
my computer.
so, Kate, can you hear me?
We're hearing a lot of
you could turn that down, Kate. There you go. Thank you. There we go. Now, are you back? No. Okay, so I am going to move us forward into this part right here, where we can talk about the money and different pieces of that equation, because this is, with the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, also Wings for Life, I know a lot of people are getting very involved with that. There's more and more opportunity to be able to raise money to continue the research that's needed, and there's it seems like, when you hear about the money that's being raised, it seems like, well, where is it all going, and how is it being used, and it really is not that much money that's being raised out there yet to be able to put forward to spinal cord injury research and to the recovery. And so getting people involved with it. So Kate said that she's going to call back in a minute. So hopefully we'll get her back, because these are information that she has that is pretty in depth, and I'm really winging it right here, and I apologize, because these are pieces that she was going to elaborate on. But I think one of the concepts that I'm hearing throughout this, and what I got from the book, reading the book, was that getting people to advocate for this research and being able to articulate it in a really accurate way, but a very simple way to get people excited by it, because each one of us has a personal stake in this that has a spinal cord injury, or someone who has a friend with a spinal cord injury, or a family member with a spinal cord injury. We all have a personal stake in it, and then the rest of the world doesn't really look at it as something that's personal. But what they're not thinking about, and what most people don't think about, is that injury is just a blink away. It's just a moment in time, and suddenly things are completely changed, and your life is completely changed, because we live in a world where if you're using a wheelchair or you're using a walker, that you have much more difficulty being able to access things that you want to do, and especially the things that you need to do to be able to work and live and thrive in the world. And so
stay healthy. Hi, Candace, I'm back.
Oh, wow, Kate, you're back. Thank you. You're
I have no idea what happened. You were carrying on so well.
Oh, well, there were some blank spots. I appreciate it, and I appreciate our audience for hanging in there, because I really didn't see anybody drop off. So,
there will be
grateful for that. So I jumped ahead a little bit about money, and I was kind of rambling on about really creating a personal piece to it, where we get people to buy in, because they don't think it really affects them, and it really does. And so I thought maybe we could, we were on slide 14, with the electrical circuit thing.
I can just say really quickly, if you put these up just really fast. So go to 14, part 3 of 7.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, 7 parts. First one, how a healthy cord works. Second one,
Right.
about cell replacements. Okay.
Yep. So third one.
The third one is about using the fact that there are intact networks below the injury site. You can see, the sort of body in the middle of this picture. There's an injury site up at the top, but there's all this stuff still working down below. That stuff, all those cells are still fine. So the whole idea with, and this is in the epidural stimulation part of the book, the whole idea of that is to excite those networks that still exist, make use of the fact that those cells are perfectly healthy. They're just not being used, and figure out how to use them. And that's been happening, as lots of people know. But there's a whole
right with with our neural recovery network and the big idea.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And it was great. I got to meet some people who had those things. So this is more why those things work. And I just would point out here, everyone knows that when women are in childbirth, there's an option to get an epidural. That's what it's called, to sort of numb the lower half of the body so that she can give birth without pain. So the epidural space is right there outside the cord where that blue arrow is. It's why having an epidural stimulator is possible, because it never touches the cord. It's just sitting in that little gap, sending out these tiny pulses of electricity. That's what it does. So I thought, I want to at least get this. Yeah, you drew little boxes around it.
Yeah, this is why it works.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, big section of the book about that. Part 4 of 7 has to do with the injury site itself. And Jerry Silver is a scientist I've known for a while now who's been in this field for as long as you've been injured, I think, Candace. He's been doing this a long time. And he has this little mental image of why those axons do not cross the injury site. And I can tell you really quickly, because there's a brick wall, there's a big scar there. Is that why? Or the second picture is because the axon kind of likes it there. It's just taking a break. There's something in the injury site that appeals to it. Or the gap is too big and the nourishment it needs is too far away. Or the fourth one is there's dragons in there. There's monsters. There's things that it hates, and so it won't cross the injury site. And so this whole part of the world of getting functional recovery is about why won't those axons grow past the injury site? How can we convince them to do it? And which one of these scenarios or combination of them is the real problem? So again, ton of detail is in the book about what each of these things means. But I think it's a really simple.
And really the illustrations are so powerful, being able to help explain what these things mean and what is going on when there's an injury to the site. So, as Kate said, she loves these illustrations. I love these illustrations. And one of the reasons I like them so much is because they are so simple. And it would be a great book to share with your kids, even, to teach them out.
I think I told you that I ran it through one of those text things. It's 5th graders can read this book.
That's right. It's the 5th graders.
That is how straightforward it is.
Yeah.
It's really true.
It really is great. It really is great. Go ahead.
So this image that's up now has to do with gene therapy, because all of that stuff that I just said about why axons won't grow across the injury site, there's barriers, there's not enough nutrients, they like it there, whatever. Those 4 things are one side of it. The other side is that axons seem to have a little instruction kit built into them that once they have grown and made their attachments to other cells, they don't grow anymore. And the instruction kit is what we call genes. That's what they are. They're little recipes. Do this and do it at this time and then don't ever do it again. So fixing that, changing that instruction is what gene therapy is about. And there's a bunch of people working on that, some very, very smart people who are doing that. I know one of them at least is coming to Working to Walk in October. So
great. It's going to be one of the
want to follow that science? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So
speaking of scientists.
Exactly. Nice segue, Kate, into science. And we're going to probably take an extra 10 minutes past the top of the hour to anyone who might need to get going, and to say to LaToya too also that we're going to go a little bit longer. We started a little bit late. We really appreciate everybody hanging in there if you have the time. If not, you will be able to relive this whole webinar in the archives. Even my gaps, you'll be able to hang in there with us and know that we will get to the finish line. All right. Sorry, Kate. Go right ahead.
Yeah, we're almost there, actually. So the fifth part of the book is about what it's like to be a scientist. Like, what is their motivation? That's really what I wanted people to understand, because when I talked with scientists, the first thing I always ask them is, what do you wish we knew? Like, what is it that if I knew it, I could help you better? And one of them gave me this brilliant answer. He said, our agenda is not your agenda. And it's not that we don't want to help and, find real solutions to what is so terribly wrong with people with spinal cord injury. It's that we're motivated by a certain set of constraints. We live within this system ourselves, and if we don't follow its rules, then we won't be able to do our work. So we have to do this. And, I hadn't understood how dumb it is that we have all these thousands of neuroscientists being trained every year, but very few jobs are available for these people. Like, very few jobs. There's almost no chance that they're going to get to work in their field. It's crazy.
Wow, we need to play these science.
Yeah, I know. So it's a thing that I think it helps me to understand when I'm talking to a scientist, like, to understand what it is that he or she is up against every day. So there's a bunch of detail in the book about that, like what their day-to-day life is like, what their education has to be, and what they have to do in order to keep active in their work, which is what the very next thing is.
Yeah, and that's a really great point that you bring up. Understanding what their perspective is, because that's how we create those really great relationships, is being able to put ourselves in another's place and understanding what their perspectives are and what their goals are, and
that's right.
And that, it's the essence of empathy, right? And that's what
and it has to go both ways. What you were saying when I signed back on is we want them to understand us, and that is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
It matters a lot, but
right.
I think it has to be reciprocal. We have to see it from their point of view too. So this slide is just a little sort of flowchart of what happens. If you start at the top, you get an idea, you try to get money for it. Maybe you get money, maybe you don't. You do your experiments, and if you're lucky, you're on the left side of the thing and your data has meaning. That's not guaranteed, okay? You submit for publication, and then the red arrow pointing at that peer-reviewed paper, that's the goal for a scientist. That's how he keeps his job. That's how she gets more money.
Okay.
By getting a paper published. If the paper is not published, all of the stuff doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. She's not going to get more money.
It never happened.
More work.
It's not published. It says if it never happened.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, just having this image in my head, I think, okay, how can I move those steps along a little faster? Is there anything the advocacy community can do to get this speeded up? Because it's super, super slow. Getting a paper published by itself can take as long as 2 years just to get it in print, And that means all that time when that information could be, in the community and inspiring other people to do more interesting work and, getting this person's work to move along faster, it's not happening because they're waiting for their paper to get published. It's unacceptably, slow. It's ridiculous. So
is that typical throughout all the sciences, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the peer-reviewed process is amazing in the global sense of making more science, right? But it's not amazing at all in the individual. We would like to get some functional return. Thank you very much. I'm happy that neuroscience is making progress, but it's not helping me right now, and it's never gonna if you keep doing it so slowly.
Right.
There's a whole part of the book, the sixth part, is about the money. Obviously, that's, I mean, none of this happens without money. And the big revelation for me is how enormous is the National Institutes of Health budget, and what a teeny tiny sliver of it is going to spinal cord injury research. Okay, like $80 million. And I want to say, I shouldn't do this, but I'm pretty sure in the book, the number that they spend currently on studying alcoholism is about 5 times that. So, again,
so that brings us back to the whole concept of the urgency of life and death, right?
Yes,
and
right.
Because there's a lot of people that are dying from the abuse of alcohol and alcoholism, and as well as the story that you used with AIDS, and so that's what our job is, I think, as people living with spinal cord injuries that have a stake in recovery, that we have to create that sense of urgency. We have to,
and we also have to understand the sources of funding and why they are the way they are, and maybe find a way in to that system as well.
Yeah, and so in your book,
slide, this is the most important thing in this book, I think, right here.
Oh my Jesus.
Because states turn out to be one of the most accessible places to get funding happening. Okay, some friends of ours in Minnesota just managed to get a bill passed through their legislature, and there's research going on right now because they did that. It took them 5 years to do it, but that funding source is going to go on for the indefinite future, and that science is going to keep happening, and it would not be happening if they hadn't done this. So there's a big effort to get more states to be doing their own fundraising through, like, fees attached to traffic tickets is one really popular way to do this. And it generates millions of dollars.
Well, and that really makes me think about grassroots and people not putting value on the fact that they're one person doing something. They feel like that is not big enough. And some of the other webinars that we've done on advocacy, over and over and over, we say one person is big enough. And going to town hall meetings, speaking to groups, going to meet with organizations, with your city government, to find out how there's ways to access money is all very, very doable. Very doable.
It is. And we have now this great resource, because these people in Minnesota who did this just recently are willing to share how it worked and, feed people along the process and hold their hands in anything they want to get done. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and that information is also in the book. Right?
And did they have an organization that had a website online?
Yeah, I put it in the book. I can tell you, it's the initials for Get Up, Stand Up, GUSU,
okay,
and then the number 2, cure.org. So GUSU2cure.org.
And the resources really in the book are phenomenal. I mean, this book has so many different aspects of it that can draw people in. And so if you're listening to this and you're feeling like you need more information, this is definitely a book that will be able to help you in that direction. And then from that information, there's going to be other ideas and creativity that come out of your thoughts as you're looking at
this. For sure. This is not an end, it's a beginning. Yes.
No, it's a beginning, yeah. And so when we say the finish line, it really truly is, a beginning as far as being able to really take part in making sure that recovery does happen from a spinal cord injury.
Yeah. I called, the finish line is the last section of the book. It's It's what happens after, all the research is done, all the money's been raised to do it, all that is in place. They still have to test that stuff. And this is like where the FDA comes in. And then we have to get them covered by insurance because we want everybody to have them. And then we want them on the market. Okay. And the other thing that's in Part 7 is what do we do? Like, what is our role in making all the pieces of this thing come together? So yeah, go to Working to Walk. Read Sam's blog. I think Sam does a fantastic job of staying current on what's going on and being inside with lots of scientists. He understands all of this super well, much better than I do. And he's a trustworthy source, for real.
Absolutely, he really is. Yeah, he does.
United by Paralysis, that's the organization that puts on Working to Walk. They're amazing. They're really all the time looking to plug people into places where they can get involved in moving things faster. And one of those things they're doing is they've organized a couple of book groups for this book, Don't Call It a Miracle. And of course, the Reeve people have made it free. So there's really no reason not to do any of this. We can start today. I put this in here because I think, who should have this? Basically everybody.
Everybody.
Why not? Why not? It's free.
Yeah, and I would say, to add to one of the bullet points beyond everybody is everybody is really disabled, non-disabled, spinal cord injury, non-spinal cord injury, it doesn't matter. It's a great resource book on how this part of your body works and what you can do, because everyone is touched by this. Everyone is touched by this. And so if one of us can offer just a little bit of information in that first part, you were talking about with your husband after his skiing accident, that you didn't know where to go, you didn't have the information, and you're feeling lost. Being able to offer just a little piece of that to someone is like a person who's been crawling through the desert seeking water, and they've been handed water. They're completely refreshed with just a few swallows of water, because it's all that they really needed to continue and move forward. And yes, this book is free. It's free. It's free to download. It's free for hard copy. It's free to you. So take advantage of it. And I also want to really emphasize the book club idea. And if anybody who is listening to this is part of a mentoring group anywhere, this is a real opportunity for the group to come together, read this book together, talk about things, and be able to really move through some of the stress that people are living day to day with when you're living with a spinal cord injury. Yep.
Yay.
I love it. Yeah, and our final page really, second to our final page, is really one from the Reeve Foundation site that gives you the opportunity to just click in the PDF, the iBooks, the Kindle, whatever it is that you like to get your information from, go and get it, and then do one more thing, share it with someone. Take this information. I was going to say, Candace, that
the request your free book by mail doesn't say this on the Reeve site, but you can order a case of them. You can do that. They'll send them to you. Take it to your library. Yeah, to be perfectly clear, no one's making money on this. I'm not making money on these things. They paid me a little to write it, and that's all done. It is a community tool that's free to everyone. This isn't about,
Well, and really share this book. Share this book, people. Yeah. Take this book, take it to the library, take it to your school, take it to the science teacher at school, take it to people that you know that like to read, give it away, encourage them to go to the site and order it. These are all things that we can do to get the information in front of people so that they are aware of it. They can personalize it. They can have the empathy, and now they buy in, and they say, hey, we have to find a way to get recovery from a spinal cord injury. And
Yay.
And I want to thank you just so much for writing this book, Kate, and to the Reed Foundation for supporting it, because it really is a gem. It's a gem. You really want this in your library, and I can't wait to share it with my nephews who are going to love it. They're going to love asking questions because they're always asking me, why don't your legs work? And I can go into the book and I can be like, look, Sander, let's talk about this. You read it to me, and we'll talk about it. And I think that's really a huge piece of it. The conversation needs to start, and we need to continue it as advocates. And so I really appreciate everybody hanging in. This is such a subject, you can tell we don't want to stop talking. But we're going to let you go. And really, Kate, you're such a gem. Thank you so much for writing this book and for taking the time today to share it with us. Thank you.
You're really welcome. Thank you a lot for inviting me to do it. I can't stand the thought that the thing exists and everybody doesn't have it already. So yeah, maybe we'll do it again sometime after 6 months.
Well,
see
you're going to have to write rewrite on it so that we're up to date on information. And so we're going to pass this off to LaToya. Thank you, everyone. It's going to be archived on the Christopher and Dana Reed Foundation in a few days, and you'll be able to relive these wonderful moments with us. Thank you.
Thanks, dear. See you, Candace.
Bye, everybody.